At the very edge of the known galaxy, a small star system hung quietly in the dark. The planets there once thrived with life and hope, but now they whispered of fear and despair. For months, signals had been sent out, faint and desperate messages. Asking for help, the galaxy's great powers had ignored them. They said it was not their war, not their fight. But Earth, distant and silent for so long, listened. Deep inside the massive Earth Command Center, the air was tense but calm. The room buzzed with machines, lights blinking in rhythm with countless screens that showed star maps, war reports, and incoming messages from across space. Commander Maravant sat at the center, eyes sharp and steady, watching the glowing console as it received one more urgent signal. The message was simple, but its meaning carried the weight of dying worlds. Help us. The swarm consumes all. The swarm. The word sent chills through the room. No one had spoken it aloud before, not officially. It was a name whispered in fear. By those who had seen the horror, enemy that did not belong to any species, no army, no home. It was a force that destroyed everything it touched: planets, fleets, civilizations. It was a shadow that moved without light, devouring stars and hope alike. The signal came from the Drexen system, a cluster of 3 planets near the galaxy's outer rim. The Drexen people had sent their call to every major power, but none had responded. None except Earth. For reasons unknown, Earth had stayed silent, watching. But now, something was changing. Mara glanced around at her officers. They had heard the stories. They had trained for this moment, but never believed it would come so soon. "Prepare the fleet," she ordered quietly. The call. Outside the command room, in the hangar bays, Earth's fleet stood ready. Ships of every size, from small fighters to massive battle cruisers, were fueled and armed. The designs were unfamiliar to most galactic races, a mix of ancient Earth technology rebuilt with modern innovation. The ships were rough around the edges, but every inch of them screamed power and resilience. This fleet was Earth's secret. Forged in years of isolation and hidden from the rest of the galaxy, Captain Eli Grayson paced the deck of the flagship Resolute. His face was set in a hard line, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. He knew the galaxy's doubts. The whispers that Earth was a minor player, too primitive, too slow to act. But now, the time for silence was over. They were going to show the universe what humanity truly was. As the countdown to departure began, the crew of the Resolute moved with practiced efficiency. Weapons systems came online, engines hummed to life, and the ship's massive frame began to shake as power surged through it. Yet, despite the noise and motion, there was a strange stillness in the air, a quiet before the storm. Suddenly the communication panel blinked. A voice crackled through, shaky and filled with fear. It was Drexen, Earth Fleet. "Please, hurry. The swarm is at our gates. We cannot hold much longer. We have lost contact with our outer colonies. If help does not arrive, we will all be consumed." Eli's jaw tightened. He turned to his first officer, Lyra Kane. "Set course for Drexen. Maximum speed, no delays." The fleet slipped out of Earth's orbit, leaving behind a world that had long hidden its strength. As they moved through the cold black of space, the officers spoke in hushed tones. The galaxy knew war was coming. But no one knew how fierce it would be, or how different Earth's role was about to become. The journey was long. It's filled with tension. Each system they passed showed signs of fear: fleets in retreat, silent colonies, scorched planets. Path was clear, destruction without mercy. But Earth's fleet did not waver. Their engines burned brighter, their weapons primed. They carried a message not just of help, but of warning. Humanity was coming. On board the Resolute, Eli looked out at the stars and thought about what lay ahead. The alien allies they had been sent to aid were desperate and broken. Their technology was strong, but their spirit was fading. They had given up hope. But humans fought because they had to, because survival was not a choice. It was the only option. The crew trained for hours every day, pushing themselves harder than ever before. Eli watched them with pride. They were not just soldiers. They were a force of nature, born from a planet that had survived wars, famine, and extinction. Now, they would face the greatest enemy the galaxy had ever known. Days before entering Drexen space, a strange event occurred. The sensors detected a vast dark cloud moving ahead, nothing like any natural phenomenon recorded before. It was alive, pulsing, expanding like a black storm. The swarm, the fleet, braced itself. The first battle was coming. In the command center, Mara Vance spoke to the fleet. "Remember who we are. We fight not just for Drexen, we fight for every world that fears the dark. Earth is not just a planet. It is a promise, a warning, that we will not fall quietly." The silence after her speech was heavy. The crew knew what was coming. The edge of the galaxy was not just a place of stars, it was a place where fear was born. But from the depths of that fear, humanity was about to rise. The call had been sent. The deadliest fleet in the galaxy was on its way, and nothing would stop it. The battlefields of Drexen were unlike anything the humans had trained for. Endless plains of ash and cracked soil stretched beneath two suns, the air thick with the smoke of burning cities. The alien skies were streaked with the trails of missiles, and the flash of distant energy blasts. The swarm had pushed deep into the system, swallowing everything in its path. Now, the humans were finally here, stepping onto a world that was already half lost. Captain Eli Grayson led the first ground assault. His boots touched the scorched soil, and a heavy silence fell over his squad. The air was thick and bitter, smelling of metal and death. Around him, soldiers from Earth and alien allies moved cautiously, their weapons raised and eyes scanning. For movement, humans had come prepared with armor and weapons, unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. But even with all their technology, this battlefield was brutal. The aliens who fought alongside them were wary. They had heard stories about human tactics, bold and sometimes brutal. They watched as humans pushed forward without hesitation, their leaders shouting orders with a fiery passion born from a different kind of fear and hope. To the aliens, this was madness. To the humans, it was survival. As the soldiers moved closer to the city of Valkar, the true horror of the swarm revealed itself. The ground shook with movement. From the shadows, the swarm's creatures emerged massive, twisted beasts covered in thick carapace and dripping acid. They snarled and screeched, rushing the lines with terrifying speed. The humans didn't hesitate. They fired with precision, their energy rifles lighting the dark. Explosions rocked the ground as grenades and heavy weapons tore through the enemy, but the swarm was relentless. More creatures poured from underground tunnels and ruined buildings. The air was filled with the screams of battle. Amid the chaos, Captain Eli spotted a towering creature far larger and more dangerous than the others. Its eyes glowed bright red, and thick armored plates covered its body. It was the kind of monster that legends were made of. The alien commanders called it the Hive Master, a creature that seemed to command the swarm's attacks. Without a word, Eli charged. His squad followed, pushing through enemy ranks with fierce determination. They used every weapon they had, but the Hive Master was relentless, striking with crushing blows and spitting deadly acid. Several soldiers fell, but the humans kept fighting, refusing to retreat. In the thick of the battle, a sudden explosion rocked the battlefield. The ground beneath the Hive Master cracked open, revealing a nest of smaller swarm creatures, surged forward to protect their master. The humans fought desperately to hold the line. From above, Earth's orbital fighters roared past, launching precise strikes that scattered the swarm and provided critical support to the ground forces. The coordination between Earth's fleet and its soldiers was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. It was a well-oiled machine built on discipline, sacrifice, and unyielding will. Despite the terror and chaos, something strange began to happen. The alien allies started to fight differently. Inspired by the humans' relentless courage, they pushed past their fear and joined the fight with renewed hope. The combined force began to turn the tide. Juno Varen, the xenobiologist, worked alongside field medics to study the swarm's biology, seeking any weakness they could exploit. She realized that the creatures were connected by a shared neural network, a living web that allowed the hive master to control its minions. Disrupt that network, and the swarm could be crippled. Captain Eli received her message and ordered an all-out attack on the hive master's position. The humans advanced through the ruins, their weapons blazing and shields up. The battle was fierce, but slowly. The swarm's strength began to break. When the hive master finally fell, a roar of relief swept through the allied forces. Creatures scattered, leaderless and confused. The humans and aliens held the battlefield for the first time in months, but the victory was only the beginning. The swarm was vast, and the war was far from over. Still, the Alliance had seen something new, something terrifying and awe-inspiring. The humans were not just allies. They were a force that would change the fate of the galaxy. Captain Eli looked out at the battlefield, battered but alive. He knew the swarm would return, stronger and smarter. But he also knew humanity would be ready. Because on this day, they had stood together and fought as one, and the galaxy would never be the same. The stars stretched endlessly before them as Earth's fleet moved into Drexen space. The vast emptiness seemed colder here, the darkness deeper, but the fleet glowed with quiet power, a shining promise that help had come at last. The alien systems had watched for months, hoping, doubting, fearing. Now they stared in shock. Earth's ships were unlike anything they had ever seen. The Resolute led the way, cutting through space with purpose. Behind it followed dozens of warships, fighters, and support vessels, each humming with latent strength. Their shapes were rugged, angular, and strange, with plates of shining metal and engines that roared silently. They were not sleek or graceful, like other fleets, but they were built to endure, to fight, to win. The Drexen command fleet scrambled their ships to meet the newcomers, their pilots tense and unsure. Commander Halrin of Drexen's battlecruiser Voroth watched from the bridge, his eyes narrowing at the approaching armada. "Is this Earth's fleet?" he asked his officers. "It looks like a relic from the old wars." The others nodded uncertainly. The Earth ships seemed rough, primitive even. Not the kind of power the galaxy expected from a planet so late to the galactic stage. But appearances were deceiving. The Earth's fleet formed tight formations, their fighters swarming like hornets, their cruisers shining with active shields. Technology pulsing through their systems was unlike anything Drexen had encountered. They used energy weapons with strange colors, missiles that seemed to move faster than light, and defensive barriers that absorbed the swarm's attacks without faltering. As the swarm's massive shadow moved closer to Drexen's core world, panic spread. Alien commanders pleaded for Earth to act quickly. "We have lost our outer colonies," a Drexen admiral told Mara Vance through the comms. "The swarm consumes everything. If your fleet cannot hold the line, all is lost." The voice was calm but firm. "We do not intend to lose." The first clash was brutal and sudden. The swarm struck like a living storm, waves of biomechanical creatures surging through space like a dark tide. Their bodies were covered in plates of metal and muscle, with eyes glowing red and jaws dripping with acid. Mercy, tearing ships apart with sharp claws and relentless energy blasts. The Drexen ships faltered. Many exploded in brilliant fireballs, sending shards of debris spinning through the void. Their pilots screamed orders, but the swarm overwhelmed them. It was clear, without Earth, Drexen would fall. But Earth's fleet did not break. The humans moved as one. Their tactics were strange, unpredictable, and terrifying. Fighters dove in close, sacrificing themselves to disable the swarm's biggest creatures. Battle cruisers fired concentrated energy beams that sliced through enemy ranks like knives. Engineers worked frantically to repair ships mid-battle. Refusing to retreat, Captain Eli Grayson led the charge from the Resolute, his voice calm but fierce over the comms. "Hold your positions. We do not fall today. We fight for every world that still breathes." Alien commanders watched in awe as Earth's deadliest weapons were unleashed. One of the fleet's most feared ships, the Titan's Wrath, opened its massive weapon bays, and released a swarm of automated drones. These drones flew into the enemy, exploding on impact and tearing the swarm's formations apart. It was a sight unlike any other fleet could produce. The humans also fought with something the aliens had never seen. Fearless determination. They charged into battle, knowing many would never return. Yet they pushed forward, ignoring wounds, ignoring pain. To them, death was only the end of one fight. There was always another. The battle stretched over ours. The dark void, lit by flashes of explosions and strange energy pulses. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The swarm, though vast and terrifying, could not match the humans' relentless assault. They were pushed back, retreating into the darkness. When the last of the swarm's ships fled, the survivors of Drexen let out a collective sigh. They had lived through the first battle, but at what cost? Mara addressed the Allied commanders through a galaxy-wide broadcast. This fight is only beginning. The swarm is vast and deadly, but humanity stands with you. We will bring victory, or we will fall trying. The fleet will not rest. Despite the victory, doubts lingered. Many aliens wondered how Earth could possess such power. Some whispered fears that humanity's weapons were too dangerous, too unpredictable. Others worried that Earth's brutal tactics would bring disaster. Captain Eli dismissed the whispers. We do not fight for glory. We fight because if we do not, there is no future. Every life we save is a victory. Every enemy we destroy is a step closer to peace. Yet behind his steady gaze, Eli knew the battles ahead would be worse. The swarm would learn, adapt, and the war for the galaxy was far from over. As the fleet regrouped and repaired, scientists aboard the Resolute studied the swarm's technology, alien machines fused with living tissue. The enemy was not just a force of destruction, but a terrible fusion of biology and mechanics, growing stronger with every kill. Juno Varen, Earth's lead xenobiologist, warned, "This enemy is unlike any we faced. It evolves, it changes. We must be ready for anything." In the quiet moments after the battle, Eli stood on the observation deck, staring at the dark stars. He thought of Earth's blue oceans, green forests, and the millions of people counting on him. They had sent their deadliest fleet here, to the edge of the galaxy, to fight a war that was not theirs by birth, but it had become theirs by choice. "We fight for survival," he whispered, "and for hope." The fleet was battered, but alive. The war had just begun, and humanity was ready. The true horror waited patiently in the shadows, watching the battles rage across star systems. The swarm was no ordinary enemy. It was a dark force born from the deepest nightmares of the galaxy, an ancient, relentless killer that consumed everything without mercy or reason. But until now, most had only whispered about it. Afraid to speak its name aloud, Captain Eli Grayson stood on the bridge of the Resolute. His eyes fixed on the screen showing live feeds from the front lines. What he saw chilled him to the core. The swarm was growing, changing, adapting faster than anyone expected. The creatures were no longer just mindless killers, they were evolving into something far worse. The scientists aboard the Resolute had begun to piece together the truth. The swarm was not just a natural predator, it was a biomechanical hive, a living machine built from the bodies of countless destroyed worlds. Each fallen creature became part of a massive network connected, controlled by a terrifying intelligence that moved like a shadow across space. Juno Varen, Earth's lead xenobiologist, explained the grim reality to the command staff. The swarm is a single entity, a hive mind. Every creature is a part of it, controlled through a neural network that spreads across space and time. Destroy one, and 10 more take its place. It's endless. The implications were terrifying. This was not a war they could win by destroying ships or armies alone. The hive mind had to be broken. As the fleet approached the core of the Drexen system, the full scale of the enemy revealed itself. Massive structures floated in space, black, organic, and alive. They pulsed with a sickly green light, surrounded by clouds of smaller swarm creatures. These were the hive node centers of the swarm's power. Destroying them would be key to crippling the enemy. but getting close would not be easy. The swarm's defense was brutal and unforgiving. Swarms of creatures attacked relentlessly, their numbers overwhelming. The galaxy's most advanced fleets had been shattered by this enemy. Now Earth's deadliest fleet faced the same test. Yet the humans did not falter. "Captain," Eli's voice echoed through the command center. "This is the fight we trained for. The fight no one else would face. Hold the line. Push forward. We will break their hive." The battle began in full fury. The swarm attacked with waves of creatures that moved like liquid steel, fast, deadly, and almost impossible to hit. The human ships fired back with concentrated energy blasts, missile barrages, and electronic countermeasures that scrambled the swarm's neural signals. On the ground, the human soldiers faced terrifying new horrors. Swarm creatures that could mimic human voices, traps that exploded with deadly acid, and massive biomechanical beasts that crushed everything underfoot. The fight was brutal, pushing every soldier to their limits. Despite the chaos, the humans showed something none of their alien allies expected, a terrifying kind of calm in the face of destruction. They moved as if death was familiar, as if losing was not an option. Their training, their spirit, and their will to survive made them the deadliest force the galaxy had ever seen. Juno, the scientists worked furiously to develop weapons to disrupt the hive mind. Using captured swarm technology and Earth Zone innovations, they created a device capable of sending a powerful pulse through the swarm's network, a shockwave that could confuse and disable the creatures. Temporarily, but the device came with a risk. It could only be used once, and its range was limited. It would have to be deployed at the heart of the hive. Captain Eli volunteered to lead the mission. "If we want to end this, we have to strike where it hurts most. I'll lead the strike. Team, it's the only way." The fleet prepared for the final assault on the swarm's core. The tension was thick, but the humans were ready. The deadliest fleet in the galaxy was about to face its greatest challenge. As the ships approached the hive nodes, the swarm launched a desperate counterattack. The skies exploded with fire and fury as thousands of creatures surged forward. Human ships held steady, firing with unrelenting precision. On the ground, Eli and his team fought through wave after wave of swarm monsters. The air was thick with smoke and the stench of burning metal and flesh. The mission was clear: reach the hive core and deploy the pulse device. Each step forward was harder than the last. The swarm's defenses seemed endless. But the humans pushed on, driven by something stronger than fear. At last they reached the core. The hive pulsed with energy, alive and aware. Eli activated the pulse device. A shockwave of light and sound burst out, disrupting the neural network. The swarms screamed in confusion as their control broke down. For a moment, silence fell. Then the creatures scattered, disorganized and vulnerable. The battle was won, but the cost was high. Many brave souls were lost. The hive was crippled, but not destroyed. The swarm would return. Captain Eli looked at the stars, knowing this war was far from over. But for the first time, humanity had shown the galaxy what true power was: not just weapons or technology, but the strength to face terror and never back down. The victories won on the battlefield brought a brief hope to the Alliance. But that hope was fragile, hanging by a thread thinner than anyone dared admit. The galaxy had never faced a threat like the swarm before, and in the face of such terror, old rivalries and fears began to resurface. Not all who fought alongside Earth and its fleet were loyal. Shadows of doubt and ambition crept quietly into the ranks. Captain, Ellie Grayson knew something was wrong, even before the first sign of betrayal appeared. Reports from scouts came back confusing and contradictory. Supply lines were being attacked, but no swarm forces were near. Communications were disrupted by unknown signals, not matching the enemy's usual patterns, and some alien commanders were strangely hesitant to follow orders. In the Grand Alliance Hall aboard the flagship Resolute, Mara Vance addressed the council. "We face an enemy unlike any other," she said firmly. "But our greatest danger now might not be from outside. We must be wary of those who would weaken us from within." Her words hung heavy in the room. Whispers followed in the corridors who could betray the Alliance. Who would dare risk the galaxy's survival? The truth was darker than anyone imagined. A faction of alien leaders, fearing Earth's rising power and the changing balance of influence, had secretly made a deal with the swarm. They hoped to use humanity's fleet as bait, to draw out the enemy and then strike when the humans were weakened or destroyed. This betrayal was a gamble driven by old grudges and desperation. The trap was set in the star system of Keldar. The humans and their allies were ordered to defend a vital outpost there. But as the fleet arrived, they found the area surrounded not only by the swarm, but also by enemy ships that did not respond to Alliance codes. Suddenly, the trap snapped shut. The humans found themselves attacked from two sides. By the relentless swarm, and by ships belonging to those who once stood beside them. The betrayal was swift and devastating. Many of Earth's ships were caught off guard, their defenses overwhelmed. Captain Eli barked orders as explosions rocked the Resolute. Hold the line. Focus fire on the enemy ships. Do not let the swarm break through. But the betrayal cut deep. Friend turned against friend. The alien ships firing on the humans were familiar to the Alliance, a cruel reminder that politics could be more deadly than any weapon. The battle was chaos. The humans fought fiercely, their determination unbroken. But the cost was terrible. Ships exploded in firestorms, and soldiers faced attacks from enemies they thought were allies. In the command center, Mara Vance's face was pale but resolute. "We must find the traitors and stop them," she said. "The future of the galaxy depends on it." Amid the fighting, Eli discovered that the traitors had sabotaged supply routes, cutting off vital fuel and ammunition shipments. Without these, the fleet's power would quickly fade. The humans worked frantically to repair the damage, their engineers risking their lives to keep the fleet operational. Juno Varen, studying intercepted communications, managed to uncover key messages revealing the names of some conspirators. The revelation shocked the Alliance. Trusted leaders were implicated, their motives selfish and dangerous. Despite the betrayal, humans refused to surrender. Their fierce spirit pushed them to regroup and counterattack. Captain Eli led a daring strike against the traitors' flagship, disabling its weapons and forcing it to retreat. The battle for Keldar was costly, but it showed the galaxy something unexpected: the unbreakable will of humanity. They fought not just the swarm, but the darkness within their own ranks. As the fleet limped away from the battlefield, wounded but alive, a new understanding settled over the Alliance. Trust was fragile, and the war was more than just fighting. Monsters in space. It was a test of loyalty, courage, and the true meaning of unity. Captain Eli stood on the deck, looking at the stars scarred by battle. He knew the road ahead would be harder, but the humans had shown they would never back down, no matter the cost. The galaxy's fate was still uncertain. But humanity had proven one thing: they would fight through betrayal, through fear, and through death itself. And in the darkest night, they were a light the enemy could not extinguish. The fleet was battered and bruised, many ships crippled, their hulls scarred by enemy fire and betrayal. The once proud Alliance now limped through the void, wounded but not defeated. The betrayal at Keldar had cut deep, but it had also forged a new resolve of fire that burned brighter than before. Humanity, though tested like never before, refused to surrender. Captain Eli Grayson moved through the corridors of the Resolute. The flagship now a symbol of survival and hope, he passed crews working tirelessly to repair damaged ships, their faces marked by exhaustion, but their eyes burning with determination. The human spirit had not been broken. If anything, it had grown stronger in the quiet moments between battles. The Alliance's leaders gathered to plan the next move. Mara Vance spoke with calm authority, reminding everyone that the war was far from over. "We have lost much," she said, "but we have also learned. The swarm is not invincible. The traitors are weakened. We rise now, stronger and united." The humans had spent long hours analyzing the swarm's behavior, looking for weaknesses to exploit. Juno Varen's team made a breakthrough, discovering a vulnerability in the swarm's hive mind that could be targeted with a new weapon. The research brought hope, but also urgency. Time was running out. The humans shared their findings openly, encouraging the alien factions to unite and stand. Together, slowly, old grudges began to fade in the face of a common enemy. The Alliance was reborn not as a fragile collection of powers, but as a true coalition of survivors. With new weapons and renewed spirit, the fleet prepared to strike back. The humans trained harder than ever, refining their tactics and pushing their limits. Every soldier, pilot, and engineer knew what was at stake. They were no longer just fighting for Drexen or Keldar. They were fighting for every world, every life, every hope in the galaxy. Captain Eli gathered his closest officers. "We have a second chance," he said quietly. "A chance to end this war before it destroys us all. But we must be ready to sacrifice everything. Victory will not come easy." The first step was a daring raid on a swarm stronghold and outpost that served as a critical supply and communication hub for the enemy. Taking it would disrupt the swarm's ability to coordinate attacks and slow their advance. The battle that followed was fierce and brutal. The humans and their allies stormed the outpost, fighting through waves of swarm creatures in dark tunnels and ruined halls. The enemy fought with savage desperation. But the humans pushed forward with unyielding courage in the chaos. Captain Eli led a small team deep into the heart of the stronghold to plant explosives that would destroy the enemy's communications. The mission was dangerous, the enemy relentless. Yet Eli and his team pressed on, fighting tooth and nail until the explosives were set. The resulting blast rocked the stronghold, severing the swarm's neural links in the area and plunging their forces into confusion. The Allied fleet took advantage of the chaos, destroying enemy ships and reclaiming lost ground. The victory was a turning point. The swarm's forces began to falter. The traitors were exposed and captured, their power broken, and the Alliance, inspired by humanity's relentless spirit, grew stronger every day. Yet beneath the celebrations, Captain Eli knew the war was far from over. The swarm would adapt. It would come back. The true test lay ahead, a battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. But for now, humanity had risen from the ashes of defeat. The Deadliest fleet was alive and fighting, not just for survival, but for hope. And in the darkness of space, that hope shone like a beacon. The galaxy was quiet, but that silence was heavy with tension. After the fierce battles and the hard-won victories, the Alliance held a fragile peace. The swarm's forces had been pushed back, their hive mind disrupted, yet fear still whispered. In the shadow sphere of what was yet to come, Captain Eli Grayson stood on the observation deck of the Resolute, staring out at the stars that stretched endlessly before him. The calm beauty of space belied the storm gathering within the hearts of the fleet. He could feel a tunny spreading among the soldiers and commanders alike. It was not just the fear of the swarm. It was something deeper. Reports had come in of strange disappearances and unexplained failures. Equipment malfunctioned without reason. Pilots reported hearing voices, seeing things in the darkness of space. Some soldiers claimed to feel a cold presence watching them, waiting. The swarm might have been weakened, but its influence was far from gone. Juno, Varen, and her team worked tirelessly to understand the strange phenomena. She believed the hive mind's pulse device had sent a shockwave, but not a final blow. The swarm's intelligence had scattered like a dark cloud, seeking to infect anything it could touch. The fear was real. It was a weapon far worse than any physical attack, the fear of the unknown, the terror of being hunted by an invisible enemy. Within the fleet, tensions rose. Trust, already fragile after the betrayal at Keldar, began to crack. Some alien factions blamed humans for drawing the swarm's attention. Others whispered of a darker curse that humanity had brought with them, a curse that could destroy them. All from within, Captain Eli faced these fears head-on. He addressed the fleet, his voice steady, but filled with the weight of their situation. "We have fought through darkness before. We'll not let fear control us. Fear is the enemy's greatest weapon. We must stand together, stronger than ever." Yet even Eli could not ignore the growing unease inside himself. The memories of lost comrades, the ghosts of battles past, they haunted him when he knew the swarm was still out there watching, waiting for the moment to strike again. One night, as the fleet traveled through a remote star system, disaster struck. The communications array on the Resolute was sabotaged, cutting off contact with the rest of the fleet. Panic spread quickly. Without communication, the fleet was vulnerable. Suspicions flew. Was this the work of the swarm's scattered intelligence, or was there still a traitor hidden among them? The uncertainty fed the fear, turning allies into suspects. Eli ordered a full investigation, but the damage was done. Crew's morale faltered, and small fights broke out in the corridors. Trust was eroding fast. Juno worked with her scientists to track the source of the sabotage. Their findings shocked the leadership. It was not a human or alien spy. It was a new type of swarm creature, a shadow entity. Capable of infiltrating ships undetected, the enemy had adapted once again. The fleet prepared for a new kind of war not. Just one fought with weapons and ships, but one fought in the mind and shadows. Captain Eli gathered his officers in the war room. We face an enemy that knows no fear. We must find strength in each other and fight not just with guns, but with our will. The coming battles would test them like never before. The real terror was not the swarm's claws or accidit. It was the fear they planted in every heart. But humanity had learned one thing well. Fear could be faced, fought, and overcome. As the stars glimmered cold and distant outside the Resolute, the Deadliest fleet prepared to fight not just for survival, but for the very soul of the galaxy. The stars were still, but the silence was broken. A signal had been detected deep, low, pulsing like a heartbeat coming from the edge of the system. It wasn't a communication from an ally. It wasn't a call for help. It was a warning. A final cry from a part of the galaxy no one dared approach. Anymore, the dead zone. The fleet had no choice. They had fought the swarm back, destroyed its hives, and shattered its main pulse core. But something still moved in the dark, something that didn't fear the living or the dead. The signal wasn't just a call, it was a challenge. Captain Eli Grayson stood at the center of the command. Deck aboard the Resolute, his eyes fixed on the projection of the signal's location. It wasn't just data. It felt alive, like it was. Reaching for them, he'd faced monsters, traitors, and horrors that had shaken him to the core. But this was different. This was the echo of something ancient and unfinished. "We need to go, Juno," Varen said beside him, her voice low. This could be the swarm's last mind, or its next evolution, no one argued. If this thing lived, the galaxy would never. No peace. So once again, Earth's Deadliest fleet moved forward, not to conquer, not to defend, but to end what should have been ended long ago. As they drew closer to the signal source, everything around them changed. Light itself seemed to bend unnaturally. Space twisted like it was alive. Ships lost sensor readings. Engines flickered. Veteran pilots said they felt cold hands in their minds. Something was waiting. What they found was not a hive. It was not a creature. It was a structure, massive, dark, floating in silence like a god's tomb. It had no engines, no weapons. But every ship in the fleet felt it watching them. Inside, scans revealed something terrifying. The structure was ancient, older than any known civilization. And within it were thousands, maybe millions of dormant swarm creatures locked in stasis. Not dead. Not alive. "Just waiting. It's a backup hive," Juno whispered. "A sleeper system. If we hadn't come, it might have stayed silent for 1,000 years, then awakened." But that wasn't the worst part. The structure was learning. Its systems had already connected to the fleet's scans. It had studied them, recognized their languages, their ship types, their weaknesses. In minutes, it could reawaken and strike with full knowledge of every enemy. There was only one choice. Destroy it now, before it fully awoke. Captain Eli gave the order. The fleet unleashed everything: missiles, plasma, kinetic warheads, even nuclear payloads. The structure absorbed it all. Shields flared, holes cracked. But the heart of it remained untouched. Then, it spoke, not in words, but in feeling. Across every ship, every mind, came a flood of images: worlds falling, skies burning, civilizations ending. It wasn't just showing destruction, it was showing the future. What would happen if they failed? Here, Some crew collapsed, screaming. Others stared in silence, frozen by the scale of what they saw. Even hardened human soldiers felt their strength falter. But Eli didn't break. He stood tall, heart pounding. We've seen fear, we've lived through it, and we're still here. He turned to his comms officer. Connect me to the entire fleet. The officer nodded, voice trembling. You're on, sir. This is Captain Grayson. What you're feeling is fear. What you're seeing is death. But this thing is not a god. It's a machine. It's old. It can be broken. We didn't come this far to run. We fight now, or there won't be anyone left to fight later. His words spread like fire. One by one, the ships re-engaged. Then came the moment that changed everything. Dot 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 dot. The smallest vessels, the Vanguard, piloted by Lieutenant Reza Lane, broke formation and raced toward the structure's core. It carried a prototype weapon and antimatter implosion bomb, never tested in real battle. Eli's voice came through. The channel, Reza don't. But Reza's voice cut in, calm and clear. It ends here. For all of us. Tell Earth. We stood. The Vanguard pierced the structure's outer wall, disappearing into the black. Seconds later, stars lit up. The explosion didn't just destroy the structure. It tore open the silence of space itself. Waves of energy spread outward, shaking, ships warping light and erasing every trace of the sleeping swarm. Silence returned. This time it was true. Final, the fleet held position for hours. Then days. There were no signs of survivors, but also no signs of danger. The threat was gone. Back on Earth, the story spread quickly. The day humanity stood at the edge of the galaxy, facing an enemy that could have ended everything. And won. They had been asked for help. What they gave was far more. They gave their deadliest. They gave their strongest. They gave their hearts. And in doing so, they saved not just Earth but the future of the stars. Captain Eli never spoke of Reza Lane's sacrifice again. He didn't have to. Every soldier in the fleet remembered. Every alien species who once looked down on Earth now looked up to them, because in the darkest place, in the final hour, humanity stood, and nothing would ever be the same again.